D.C. to taunt Trump with his new Wall Street nickname, Taco, which means Trump always chickens out, a reference to the many times that he has retreated from his trade war threats, right? Promising something and then lowering them without a negotiation. The truck, obviously featuring an image of Trump as a chicken. This is the White House says Trump has sent out letters to major U.S. trading partners, and they have demanded their quote unquote best offers by the end of the day tomorrow. The move is an effort it's unclear, to try to get a deal done. Deals don't happen that way, but to get something started before Trump's deadline, which is now just weeks away. The president taking to Truth Social today to celebrate his tariffs, claiming, quote, because of tariffs, our economy is booming. Just hours later, though, a different picture came from the OECD, which slashed its U.S. growth forecasts, bringing global expectations down with it as the world's biggest economy. Fed Governor Lisa Cook adding more caution after Trump's post, warning tariffs could reignite inflation and drag down unemployment. Tonight, Will Ripley is out front on exactly how China right now is viewing Trump's trade war.
This AI-generated anime is going viral in China, portraying U.S. President Donald Trump as a tariff-wielding superhero. It's one of several recent videos mocking Trump's trade war policies, many of them created with AI.
Your taxi truck, your taxi chair, red was burning, you dumpster fire.
China's English-language broadcaster produced this video, blaming Trump's tariffs for U.S. inflation and global instability. The video echoes Beijing's official stance. Since the U.S. imposition of the unilateral tariff measures, it has not resolved any of its own issues, she says, and has instead severely undermined the international economic and trade order. China's Xinhua news agency produced this AI animation featuring a robot named Tariff, programmed to impose trade restrictions.
I now choose death to end the harm.
Please, don't do this.
Goodbye, Dr. Mallory.
The robot self-destructs rather than obey orders to raise tariffs. AI-generated clips like these, showing Trump and Elon Musk hard at work in factories, have been flooding China's tightly controlled social media platforms for months, all untouched by Beijing's army of online censors. Designed to push China's narrative, the U.S. is making a fool of itself, and more importantly, losing ground to China in the global trade war President Trump started. China's foreign trade has been able to withstand the difficulties, he says, maintaining steady growth and showing strong resilience to maintain competitiveness on the international front. China's Bureau of Statistics put out numbers claiming exports are actually rising despite the trade war, partially due to a surge in orders before the tariffs kicked in. Outside observers often question the accuracy of China's numbers, which are impossible to independently verify. At this Chinese textile plant, the director says the U.S. no longer dominates their strategy. The trade war made me realize the U.S. is just a small part of the global market, he says. We'd rather bring Chinese products to the rest of the world, reasonably priced, high quality, and let more people benefit. China's top diplomat is also firing back, Wang Yi reportedly telling new U.S. Ambassador David Perdue the U.S.-China relationship's at a critical juncture. The Chinese readout of the meeting also says David Perdue stated that President Trump greatly respects President Xi Jinping. Far from tough talk, China claims, ahead of that likely crucial call between Trump and Xi. They certainly do have a lot to talk about. The 90-day trade truce they brokered in Geneva, that's unraveling, Aaron, as you know. At stake, rare earth minerals, vital for U.S. tech and defense, which China is still restricting. Washington's latest retaliatory moves include tech sanctions, student visa bans. Both sides are now accusing the other of undermining the agreement. So this, as you've been covering extensively, is putting global markets and supply chains on edge, Aaron.
All right, Will, thank you very much. Will Ripley from Taiwan tonight. And out front now, Torsten Slok, chief economist for Apollo Global Management. Torsten, I'm glad to see you again. So, when we hear this reporting in Will's piece, the narrative emerging from China tonight, right? So this is the narrative they want out there. They're mocking Trump ahead of this call with Xi. They portray the U.S. as increasingly isolated economically and losing ground. Now, just on those 2 points, increasingly isolated economically and losing ground, is there any truth to that?
Well, if you look at the daily data for the number of containers coming from China to the US, that is actually still relatively low. And that's quite surprising when they signed the trade deal on May the 12th, you would have expected to see a rapid increase in the number of containers traveling from China to the US. So what has been most surprising really here is that we're still seeing somewhat of a reluctance among US corporates to import things from China. And that's telling you that so far, yes, it is likely that we will see some rebound in trade, but the data that comes in every day continues to be weaker than what the market has been expecting.
And what the market has been expecting, and maybe as a rude awakening, I want to ask you more on that in a moment. But first, just this issue with tomorrow, right? The White House says that Trump wants final offers tomorrow from everybody. You know, kind of give me your best and final with a yet undefined or else. Now, when you hear that in the context of, right, Trump put 145% tariffs on China and then without a negotiation, put them down to 35, or he put 40 something on Vietnam and puts it down to 10. You know, these things that we've seen him do. Is he giving himself an off ramp here with this best and final tomorrow? I mean, I know the Wall Street's been using the acronym TACO, but you know, is that what this is?
Well, the challenge here is, of course, that it is not easy to just quickly make a trade deal. The trade deals are not only about the tariffs on goods. It's also about non-tariff barriers. It's also services. It's also all kinds of other things that normally go into negotiations, such as anti-dumping, it's labor standards, environmental standards. So I think that the backdrop really here is that normally it takes quite some time, and the clock is obviously ticking for markets. We had the 90-day deadline that he imposed, of course, on April the 9th. That means that we have to get to July the 8th. Then we'll figure out what will go on with tariffs, of course, on a number of different fronts. And China, of course, has a separate deadline that is more like August the 8th. So, yes, we should expect probably to see some progress. But the bottom line is that, of course, as we know, trade deals are very difficult to complete. So I think it's fair to say that expectations, at least on when it comes to what we'll get in terms of a trade deal, should be probably more limited.
When you talk about expectations being a little bit out of whack, then you could add to that, you know, this big, beautiful bill, as it has been called by Republicans formally, that could add up to $4 trillion to the debt, right? There's a lot out there that the market is right now blithely, you know, sort of whistling past the graveyard about. Ray Dalio today, the billionaire investor, said, quote, "We should be afraid of the bond market." And it came on the heels of Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase recently warning about a crack in the bond market. And he said it in a very clear but ominous way. Let me play it.
You are going to see a crack in the bond market, okay? It is going to happen. And I tell this to my regulators, some of who are in this room, I'm telling you it's going to happen, and you're going to panic.
Do you think he's right? It's going to happen, and there will be panic? And what's going to be the trigger for it, Torsten?
Yeah, no, I think this is a risk. I mean, the first thing we just talked about here, of course, is there's some issues around what will happen to the economy in the near term as a result of the trade war. That, of course, is on its own somewhat worrying, in particular if the trade war drags the economy down, as the OECD was saying in their new forecast today. But the second thing, as you're highlighting, Aaron, is exactly in the background. That has nothing to do with the trade war. We have a fiscal issue that is quite significant. And to your question, where could these cracks appear? What might we see? Treasury auctions run throughout the week. For example, every other day, there is an auction at 1 p.m. where the Treasury is selling 7-year government bonds, 20-year government bonds, 2-year government bonds. And the statistics that come out of these different auctions potentially could be very important. And when Jamie Dimon talks about a crack, one area where we could see a crack is that some of these statistics have been weakening. In particular, foreign participation in buying U.S. government bonds in auctions has been going down in the last 2 months. So there's a number of areas when it comes to the specifics of who are the buyers, what is the demand for U.S. government debt relative to the significant increase in supply coming partly also because of the big, beautiful bill.
All right. Thank you very much, Torsten.